Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. I have a great program for you guys today. You guys are going to love what we're here to present. You know what? It is always great to see when we get real progressives out there that are fearless, that are never never pull back, that are never scared to tell things the way they are. And lucky for us today, we have a candidate who is running for the Kansas Attorney General. And remember what we said here at Politics Done Right. We continue to bring progressives onto this show that not only are progressives, but that are strong in their beliefs, and that we can look up to, that really represent the values of what we represent. So, folks, let me start without further ado the program. The title is Democratic Attorney General candidate Sarah Swain tells why she is running. And believe it or not, she is going to be the Democratic representative that will be running solely against the Republican out there. And you know what? You know, the swords are already flying, but you know what? We don't care, because progressives that are listening from all over the country, there's something that I've got to tell you. Firstly, you've got to support all these progressive candidates, the ones that you don't hear on ABC, CBS, NBC, and all these other stations. You make sure within our blog post for this, there is a link to her website as well. Make sure she gets your support. Make sure you're there to make the calls for her when it is necessary for this blue wave to take over and bring these folks in. Remember, it's not only on the national level, it's at the state level, it's at the county level. It is at all levels that we must win and take this country back. So, title of the show is Democratic Attorney General candidate Sarah Swain tells why she is running. And the subtitle, Kansas, home of the failed conservative governor Sam Brownback. And we've spoken about Sam Brownback, good old Sammy, and what he's done to that state. In fact, we've had even CEOs on who have left the state and crossed the border just because we know why. So, Kansas, home of the failed conservative governor Sam Brownback, is ready to do her part to restore the Kansas of luminaries like Ike. Yes, I know Ike was a Republican, but those were other times. If Ike was alive today, I guarantee you Ike would be a progressive Democrat. The man who built the freeways or started the freeways, I guarantee you he would have been called a good old pinko liberal. Anyhow, Politics Done Right promised to bring progressive candidates to the forefront. Our goal is to give all candidates their deserved visibility throughout the internet and the airwaves, generally reserved for whom the plutocracy controls. All but 2 candidates appearing on Politics Done Right have won. Therefore, Sarah is in good company to win. We won't claim karma. Then again, I think we will. Laughing out loud is what I put out there, but I mean it. Today, we have another great progressive, Sarah Swain. She is the Democratic candidate running for Kansas Attorney General. So who is Sarah? We will tell you a little bit about her, but we have her here, so she will fill in the blanks. But for now, Sarah Swain is a third-generation Kansan. She's a graduate of the University of Kansas School of Law and studied political science at Baker University. She is running for Kansas Attorney General. Sarah has dedicated her career to the equal application of justice, integrity, and accountability for all. As a criminal defense attorney for nearly 17 years, Swain has firsthand how justice had not been applied equally to many of citizens in Kansas. She has been a fierce advocate for accountability and integrity in Kansas courts. Swain continues to expose and advocate against corruption every day of her career while working for positive solutions for her community and Kansas. Swain, like so many in Kansas, has grown tired of the status quo, where Kansans are not part of the process and are also left behind to the whims of the political machinations of elected officials who do not put Kansas citizens first. Instead of complaining about it, Swain has decided to do something about it, something we've told all progressives they need to do. Run, 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 and run. Stop complaining and run. And that's what she's doing. She's doing it, and she deserves your support. She decided to do something about it as the next Attorney General of Kansas. Swain's platform calls for equal justice, oversight and protection, equal access to justice, citizens accountability, government accountability, cryptocurrency protection, regulatory enforcement, ending cannabis prohibition, and enforcing the Kansas Constitution. After we speak with Sarah, we will discuss two issues. On the blog of the week, we'll talk about a recent open letter from Robert Reich to Republicans. I also want to discuss the privatization of the commons. Folks, we all know what that means. But before we get started, I want to remind all our folks, so please, the first thing I need you to do, the first thing I want you to do, if you're on Blog Talk Radio, go ahead and hit a hit your Twitter and make sure folks know that this show is going on. If you're on Facebook Live, go ahead and do make sure to place this stuff on your Facebook page, your Facebook wall, and all over. If you're on Instagram, do the same. If you're on Twitter, if you're on the Yellow Man, do all that. Because you know what? The alternative media is what's going to change this country. It's not going to be done via the corporatocracy. But without further ado, we are going to bring to you Sarah Swain. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and just listening to your introduction of me and the introduction of your show, I'm inspired. You've inspired me. You know, I feel like we have a real lack of inspiration in our lives these days in this country, and I think it's important that we all seek that in our lives.
It is so important, Sarah. Let me tell you, for too long, you know, one of the narratives that we have is that we have to coalesce to some non-existent status. We have to somehow be, we have to kind of cater ourselves to a group of folk that, well, I don't know. We have to temper the things that we say. And what I've told people is, you know why Republicans win? Because they're strong, or not that they're strong, but they give the implication or they give the semblance of strength, but really they're weaklings. Their policies only support their masters, and their masters is the plutocracy. The grassroots is who supports you, and if the grassroots know you are going to be there, they are going to be there for you.
Well, I hope so. And ultimately, when I had to sit down and as the days were drawing near where I had to make a decision and get in my car, drive to Topeka, and register to run, if I was going to do that, I really had to think about, you know, as someone who does follow politics, as someone who is appalled watching the news, like many Americans, I can barely stomach turning on the news. Even looking at it online is really hard for the average American right now, based on what we have going on in Washington, and really what we have had going on in Topeka as well, as you mentioned in your opening. So, you know, the thing that I keep saying, and I keep saying it because I really believe it, the voters are going to have some very clear choices come November. The days of, oh, all the candidates are the same, it doesn't really matter who you vote for, those days are over, and those days really came to a screeching halt when this country elected Donald Trump. So I'm proud to be a progressive. I'm proud to be a progressive voice in this state. I didn't really know that's what I was going to be, but I'm happy to be it, and I'm happy to be someone saying the things that need to be said. Someone in Kansas politics needs to stand up and say, we need to end the war on drugs. That has been a failure. It is a waste of resources. It decimates communities. It's a lose-lose-lose equation in my book, the war on drugs. We need politicians that will say these things. It's time for us to legalize marijuana in Kansas. It's time for criminal justice reform. These are all things that I believe in very strongly and deeply based on my experiences within the criminal justice system for the last almost 2 decades. And I want things to change. And as I looked at myself in the mirror that morning when I had 4 more hours left to make the decision, I had to really ask myself if I could live with knowing that I had the chance to drive to Topeka and sign my name on that dotted line, knowing that my name would appear on every single Kansan's ballot who will vote in November. Would I be able to look myself in the face knowing that I had the chance to do it and I just was too scared? And at the end of the day, you know, my decision was, as someone who has preached to clients and prosecutors and judges for years the importance of not just talking the talk, but also walking the walk, this was the Sarah Swain equivalent of that. And I'm happy to have a voice to be able to say those things. And I hope that it starts new conversations, because we need to be having new conversations in Kansas about the future of this state.
That is so true. I mean, you've had a governor who, you know what I write several blogs every day. And for a minute, I had a pet peeve, and it was Kansas. It was Brother Brownback, your governor. Your governor, I think, should have made things quite easy, because he showed the difference between what a government that governs entirely conservatively could contrast with one that governed completely progressively, as one in California. And we saw the economies, we saw the social safety nets, we saw all the differences in how this apply. In Kansas, we saw schools closing, we saw all the negative effects that occurred in Kansas, while in California, we saw a state on the growth. And we can use we can use Minnesota versus its next door neighbor, Indiana, and all these other things to show the difference in governance. What I'm hoping, because what happens over time, or what has happened, is Republicans have created a narrative that has progressives scared to counter. And what I love with what you have done with your campaign, and in some of the wordings I've read about yourself, is that just as you just mentioned, you want to be able to have contrast and not be scared to put what that contrast is. As a progressive, these are the things you stand for. And the thing about it is, those are the things people want.
Well, I think that people, oh man, it's so nice to be at a point in my life where to get to be a person that everyday average Kansans can hear my voice and hear the things that I'm saying. And for those people, it could be that I'm the first politician that they've ever heard say those words.
Exactly.
I have come to understand the significance of that moment, because for me in my life, that candidate was Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And at a moment when I was becoming totally disillusioned with politics and how there was very little difference between Republicans and Democrats, I finally heard a voice that inspired me, that moved me, that got me to take my daughter and stand in line for hours so that she could hear Bernie Sanders speak when, you know, she was really too young to understand what was going on. But the importance of that wasn't lost on me. And today, the importance of me now getting to step into the shoes of being that candidate that can say these things, like, it is time to legalize marijuana in Kansas. Sick people need to have access to their medicine. People need to be able to treat these children with seizure disorders and these very life-threatening, disabling diseases with the safest medicine that we have. And I'm excited, I'm happy, I'm proud to get to stand up and say those things. And I hope that by saying them, there are people out there hearing it who are inspired to go register to vote for the first time, who get up off the couch and go put a yard sign out front or go talk to their neighbor about the upcoming election. I mean, that's really how we change things here, is we give people something to be inspired about, and in that inspiration, we move forward as a society, hopefully. That's what I hope we see happen in November.
Let me tell you how I answered to some of what you've just said, and this is what I think is very important, Sarah. You know, a lot of times we've been taught to say, "I hope." You remember when President Obama, when then Senator Obama ran, he ran on hope. I said that is great to run on hope. I don't want to run on hope anymore. I want to run on, or we want to run on what we will make happen. And whether we win or not, and in your case, I'm going to say, let's make sure you win. But whether we win or not, we stop telling people what we hope for, and we start telling people when we get in, this is what we are going to do. This is what we are going to do. And for those who try to prevent us from doing it, we will have our posse ready to tell you what needs to be done. Because I think if you take a look at how Republicans have operated, I mean, that's just how they operate. And the reason they're able to operate that is because they have no pushback. We hope, we ask, we are civil. I'm not saying to lose your civility, but we are overly civil. We don't do this because it's beyond the norms. I am a blogger. I call myself an activist, blogger, activist, journalist for one reason. I said the old paradigm doesn't work anymore. He said, she said doesn't work anymore. What you're doing is what works. What you're doing is you're going to go out there and you're going to talk to all those, they're going to do polls that are going to likely make it look like, it's not going to be a close election or whatever, because they have a particular base that they're looking at. They don't know the kinds of voters you can bring in once you hit social justice, once you hit marijuana, once you hit these other issues that have frozen out so many people that said, why the hell am I voting for? There's nothing in there for me. You are liable to bring a whole group of new voters in. And I want to bring up something about that, Sarah, because this is a touchy subject. There is something that you did, and I'm coming to the phone lines in a minute. There's something that you did. There's a poster that you had in your office, and I don't want to make a big thing out of this so that somebody can take this video and try to cut it and paste it to somehow make a TV commercial in a particular way. So I want to do it this way. And let's watch the way we say this, specifically because of how these guys love to cut up different interviews. But here we go. In your office, you had a Wonder Woman poster, and the Wonder Woman poster had a lasso around a cop. And for that, not only did the right wing go berserk, but even our party wanted you to quit the race because of it. The weaklings. I don't want to call the other word that I would call them. First of all, I'd like you to give a quick, not a whole lot, because I don't want a lot of your voice on this, but give me a quick characterization of exactly what you were trying to do with that narrative.
Well, the first thing that I feel like it's important to say is that the Democrats actively sought to convince me that I should not run for office as Attorney General. So that happened before the deadline. I received a phone call, and when I got off the phone with that person who was with the Kansas Democratic Party, I thought to myself, wow, this is politics. This is how it works. It's rarely about the right candidate. It's rarely about the most qualified person. It's about who knows who and who's owed what. And obviously, that's not me. I'm not a political figure. I've been a criminal defense attorney for the last 17 years. So the Democrats doing what they did came as no surprise. And I believe that the Democrats denouncing my candidacy had little to do with a poster of Wonder Woman in my office and much to do with me being someone that is not going along with the plan.
Right.
The poster that hung in the front of my office is a poster that I had made. Over the course of time as a criminal defense attorney representing thousands of people, at some point, some of my clients started sort of referring to me as Wonder Woman, and I have Wonder Woman images up around my office, and my car has a Wonder Woman license plate. And so the image that I had made is of Wonder Woman using her lasso of truth, which is wrapped around this police officer who is lying on the ground. And if you look at the poster, because I had it made, so I know every square inch of it. You see that there's a gun and some shell casings laying on the ground next to the officer. And that's because at the same time that I was seeing a lot of police corruption in various cases that I was doing, some very high-profile cases I was doing, and I was unearthing a lot of really troubling information about police officers involved in these cases. And then at the same time, we had this outpouring of police shootings around the country. And, for me, what that poster symbolizes is that there is no point in time where it is more urgent for a police officer to tell the truth than it is when they step into a courtroom to provide testimony about some investigation, some interview, some evidence they've collected. And it's only when we have criminal defense attorneys who are basically the last line of defense against police officers who will get on the stand and lie. The only weapon we have at that point is the truth. And cross-examination and vigorous cross-examination of police officers, which is something that I have become known for throughout my career, is really the tool that we have. That is our lasso of truth. So that is the origins of the poster and the meaning behind it, the story that was told about the poster and the various allegations about me. I paid very little attention to because they were so far from the truth that I didn't feel like it was something that I needed to spend a lot of time responding to.
Excellent. Now, let me ask you this. Are you telling me, and I'm curious here, that that the establishment Democrats were trying to get you to leave the race even though there was not another candidate running as a Democrat?
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Now, does that make any sense? Doesn't that sound like a quid pro quo with even maybe with Republicans? No comment.
I don't have any explanation for
Exactly.
it. I mean, that would certainly be a logical conclusion that someone could jump to.
Exactly. So we're talking.
I'm not someone who has political connections.
Exactly. I don't, that's an unfair question because you can't possibly know the answer, nor can I. But I can assume, I can speculate, and I can actually say it without it affecting me politically. So I mean, what I'm saying, let me just tell you about the police officers and so forth. There are good police officers out there, and there are bad police officers out there, and that there's a Wonder Woman that will go ahead and ensure that the bad police officers are found out. To a large segment of Kansas, to a large segment of this population, that is exactly what we want. We don't want the sanctity of doctors. We don't want the sanctity of cops. We don't want the sanctity of anybody. We want good people to be rewarded and bad people to be put away. And there's nothing special about police officers that should make them any better than any other profession out there. Just like we can go after doctors, lawyers, and everybody else, we can go after bad cops, because you know what? There are a lot of them. And myself, as a person of color here, I can tell you that I have seen the difference in how police officers treat and how they do with folks. So let me tell you, that stance alone, not an attack on any particular profession, but just seeking truth. Folks knowing that they have a Wonder Woman doing that is good enough for you to gain a hell of a lot of votes and probably bring in voters that otherwise would not vote. So please keep up the good work on that. Now, before we go any further, because we're going to go just a few more minutes and ask you, tell our audience first of all, in bullet points, what do you stand for?
Well, I think one of the main agendas that I have is criminal justice reform on practically all levels. Obviously, we have never had, I would say, we have never had in Kansas an attorney general who was focused on criminal justice reform. So I think it's kind of difficult at times to come up with exact ideas of how that would or could be implemented in practice. But certainly just some issues that I believe in wholeheartedly are, without a doubt, I believe that we should end the war on drugs in the state of Kansas. I think we should do it nationwide, but obviously what I'm running for is Kansas Attorney General. We have an Attorney General who last year came out with an opinion that said that he believes that CBD should be illegal. So all of the people who had been getting relief with CBD only medicine that they could still get in the state of Kansas were stripped of that. I think that the issue of legalizing marijuana is certainly something that I feel very strongly in. I also believe that as part of criminal justice reform, I don't think it's enough to just legalize. I think along with legalizing, we really need to be going back and looking at sentences for non-violent offenders, people charged or convicted of drug crimes. I think we should be looking at ways to get them out early. What do we need to do? What kind of system could be implemented? Our society does not benefit from more people being incarcerated. I will always believe that our society will actually be better the fewer people we incarcerate. And let's use the funds to invest in our communities, to invest in our state, not invest in incarceration. It's absurd, and I think that it is one of the biggest things that we can do to not only be socially conscious, but if for no other reason, let's just do it for the finances of it. The difference in the state budget of Kansas between a state that has legal marijuana and a state that doesn't have legal marijuana it's night and day. It's night and day. And I believe that legalization only benefits Kansans, only benefits the state. only brings in business, brings in people who are tourists, has people drive through the state of Kansas and spend their money at our gas stations instead of driving around Kansas, like I've heard many times people talk about. Let's enact policies, and myself as Attorney General, let's do things that encourage people to come to Kansas instead of driving people away in droves. And anything that I can do as Attorney General to make Kansas a state that is not a place that other people laugh about. I mean, that's not the Kansas I know. It's the Kansas that has dark path under Brownback.
Yes.
And we have to turn it around. And we have to have some candidates who are out there saying these things that are actually going to do these things when elected. If we're going to move back in the right direction as a state.
Well, look, let me tell you, Sarah Swain, we want to, there's a caller on the line. If you want to speak, please hit the number 1, because right now I don't know if you're just listening or you want to speak. And for those that are on Coffee Party Network, Pacifica Network, or on Facebook Live, you can just drop me a line. Those on the otherwise, you can send me however you want. Twitter on hashtag Politics Done Right. Okay, we have line 951. What would you like to ask Sarah, if that's what you're calling in for? You're hot.
Hello, this is Mike Harris from California. I'm well aware of Sarah Swain, and I'd like to hear what she thinks she could do as an attorney general, what tools that she would have at her disposal that would help cannabis defendants or ending cannabis prohibition. I know that the state doesn't have an initiative process, but the Attorney General basically directs all the other district attorneys. So what can she add to that?
Sarah?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I will try to not make this a run-on story, but, you know, I really became convinced here recently when I took on, there was a proposal for a large new jail to be built in my hometown. And as someone who has gotten onto this walk the walk, not just talk the talk, when I heard about it, I got involved, and I was a very vocal opponent of the proposal. And part of what I did was go to a lot of meetings with just, you know, ordinary average citizens, and I would stand up and speak my piece about what I believed were some of the problems with our criminal justice system locally that could be addressed, that would decrease the population at the jail without us having to spend $44 million on a new jail. And one issue that really struck a chord with a lot of people I talked to was they were horrified at the idea that people were still going to jail and prison for marijuana. And I found it so interesting because as a criminal defense attorney, I'm well aware of that fact. But I'm not sure that the average person who hears all about new medical marijuana laws and new states legalizing, I'm not sure that they really understand how much of an issue it still is and how much it drives incarceration in this country. So, long story short, to the caller, I want to use every tool in my arsenal to dismantle the war on drugs. That's what I would say to you to answer your question. I think that there needs to be legislation that is put forward to a vote on legalization. Obviously, that's something that's outside the reach of the Attorney General, but certainly I believe having a progressive Attorney General who is putting pressure on the legislature to do these things, I mean, who knows how far we can go with that. I don't think we've ever seen it in Kansas, but, you know, hopefully 2019 will be the year that the citizens of Kansas will get to witness that.
Well, like I'm telling all our audience throughout the country, it is our responsibility to get it done. This morning, I was on air at KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston, the Pacifica Network station, and we were doing fundraising for this progressive station, the only progressive station in Southeast Texas, and Texas is huge. And what I try to remind folks all along is if progressives are to win, progressives have to be supportive. If progressives are to win, all the folks, California is a great progressive state. To the caller, you're going to win your state from top to bottom. It is incumbent upon progressives throughout the country to support the folks that get very little recognition nationally, and as such their opponents are able to use the vast resources of the Republican machine to win. I think this is 1 year. This year is 1 year that we can go ahead, and once those of us, the progressives throughout the country, I think it's our responsibility to get the Sarah Swains and all the other progressives that are running right now elected. Like I said, it is our job. Sarah has done her part. She ran. That is something we've been asked. She ran in a state that many consider very red. We have the teachers in that state now who are protesting. There's teachers in that state now who are fed up. There are a lot of fed up constituencies in that state right now, in Kansas, because Brownback has destroyed the backbone of that state. Sarah Swain can win if progressives do their part throughout the country and give a helping hand to all of those around the countries in conditions like where Sarah is running. If we do the job, these people will be elected. Forget about what the polls say today, because again, what has happened in this country is the makeup of the people who vote does not represent the values of the people who would vote. Sarah.
I agree, and I just want to say to piggyback on to your fantastic comments, I see no downside to a Kansas that focuses on better funding for schools and less funding for incarceration.
Absolutely.
I don't know how we even got to a point in our country where there's a debate about that.
Absolutely not. And if that
public,
is you, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
I was just going to say, public education is investing in our future, in our children. How we ever got to a point where it became more important in our budget to keep incarcerating people than it did to keep our teachers and our schools fully funded. It's a completely foreign concept to me, and I think that the average Kansan is tired of that. I think they're tired of that narrative, and we will find out in November.
Right now,
if they're tired of it or not.
Now, I'm going to implore you to do something that is very important, however, in Kansas, and I tell this to progressives throughout the country. Many times, what happens is progressives campaign, progressives go to places where they're comfortable and everything looks good because they're in their comfort zone. There are a lot of people that are misled in this country. So I hope you'll go into those mountains. I hope you'll go into those areas of your state that people may not initially be welcoming to you, but that when you go out there and you show who you are and you show that you are for them, that even if you don't get 50% of them, just getting 38% of them will be enough for you to do what you need to do to win the race.
Well, you must not understand that that's what I've done
All
for the
right.
last 17 years.
Great.
Those are my people.
Excellent.
Those are the people that I have stood next to in court and that I have battled. I've battled for their futures, for their lives, for their jobs, for their families. And those are the people who know who I am and what I'm about. And those are the people who normally don't hear anyone saying anything that makes them want to get up and go cast a vote.
Excellent.
But
Sarah,
they know who I am.
Excellent,
because
Sarah.
they've stood next to me.
I'm glad to hear that, Sarah, because you're progressive. So please go ahead then and tell folks before we let you go, how can they reach you? How can they help you? We already have you on the screen with all your information, but for those that are listening on Blog Talk Radio and other networks, it would be good for you to tell them, how can they help you? How can they get to you?
Well, the bottom line is that much like everything else in 2018, money is important. Fundraising is something that has to be a part of every campaign. I'm running a very grassroots campaign. I don't have political connections. I don't have rich parents funding my campaign. It's just me. So obviously people willing to make donations, that is much appreciated. Second best to that is just manpower. We have a primary on August 7th, so in a little less than 2 weeks. I don't have a primary because no one else ran as a Democrat, so I will be on the ballot in November, but come August 7th, when all of the other primaries are decided, it will be time for boots on the ground and having people willing to knock on doors and deliver yard signs and man booths and make phone calls. I mean, as part of the campaign to defeat the jail expansion here in Douglas County, I was doing all of those things. You know, I saw really firsthand, up close and personal, the absolute impact we had on that election just because we were motivated and inspired to defeat it, and we were willing to get out and burn some shoe leather, as they say. You know, if you really believe in the future of this country, and if you really believe in the future of Kansas like I do, you have to really be willing to get up and go outside and get involved, and that's how we win. That's how we get the blue wave in November 2018, is people doing the work to make that happen.
Sarah, with that, we have to close it. Please, folks, go to sarahswainforattorneygeneral.com. sarahswainforattorneygeneral.com. It's also a direct link in the blog post that you can get to her website, learn all about her, learn how you can be a part of the campaign. Remember also her Twitter handle is The Swain Law. The Swain Law. Sarah, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so kindly for appearing on Politics Done Right. You go out there and fight like hell and make sure that the progressives, you bring them along. And I am very, very impressed with the fight that you put on the party when they tried to do their thing.
Thank you.
You have a wonderful day, my friend. Okay, folks, that was Sarah Swain of Kansas. She is running for Attorney General of Kansas. And I tell you what, this is the year that she should win. And we have to make sure of that. So for those of you who are progressives, who are, what should I say, who know what's going on, do make sure that you support this woman, whatever state that you're in. Anyhow, as you know, let me go ahead and see if there's anything quick that I need to answer here. Let's see. I agree, bullet points should come first. I really like Sarah's ideas. Absolutely so. Now, yeah. Anyhow, she should win that election, and every progressive in these sort of states should win. I don't know how much of you guys have followed what Brownback did to Kansas. I've been writing about Brownback for quite a while. Brownback just about decimated that complete state. The teachers are in dire straits. The economy is in dire straits. The rest of the country has come back. Kansas has not. And there's a good reason By the way, we just got back from a vacation where we drove through Kansas. Yes, it's Kansas. So having a good attorney general is important. I said I wanted to read the blog of the week. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read it real quick because I'm not going to give a whole lot of commentary about it because we don't have the time. I stayed much longer with Sarah than I thought I was going to be on with her, but I wanted her to get her entire piece out. But anyhow, Robert Wright suggests a drastic act to GOP senators in a striking letter. The question is, will they listen? Robert Wright continues to be one of the major intellectual leaders in the progressive movement and the resistance to Donald Trump's tyranny and the GOP's complicity. He has requested of Republican senators that will make them, he had a request for Republican senators that if they do it, they will become heroes. Robert Reich addressed several GOP senators in a striking letter to 4 Republican senators with a suggestion to save the country. Will they do it? They must. Robert Wright's letter explains why these senators must be at minimum independents who caucus with Democrats. He tells why they must act now. A foreign power has attacked our democratic institutions and, according to American intelligence, continues to do so. Yet the President of the United States is unwilling to fully acknowledge this or aggressively stop it. Most of your Republican colleagues in the Senate will not force his hand. As a result, because your party has control of the Senate, there is no effective check on the President or on Putin. What is America to do? We will exercise our right to vote on November 6th, but by the time our system may be compromised, the president must be constrained now. Putin's aggression must be stopped now. If just 2 of you changed parties, becoming independent and caucusing with the Democrats, the Republican Party would no longer have a majority in the Senate. The Senate would become a check on the president, as the framers of the Constitution envisioned it would be, and the president would defend the United States as the framers intended. I implore you to do so. Wright reminds them of an important precedent set by former Republican Senator Jim Jeffords. I don't know if you guys remember that. That was kind of a long time ago, but here's it. There's a precedent. Quote, there's a president, I'm sure you remember, Jim Jeffords of Vermont, who served as a Republican senator from 1989 to 2001. He then left the GOP to become an independent and began caucusing with the Democrats. Jeffords changed control of the Senate from Republican to Democratic. Jeffords left the Republican Party because of issues in which his Republican colleagues and Bush administration. As he said at the time, increasingly, I find myself in disagreement with my party. Given the changing nature of the National Party, it has become a struggle for our leaders to deal with me and for me to deal with them. I knew and admired Jeffords. This is Robert Reich speaking. I knew and admired Jeffords years before he switched parties. He worked together on a number of initiatives when I was Secretary of Labor. Yeah, Reich was the Secretary of Labor for Bill Clinton. In fact, I interviewed him last year when he released, actually I think it was a year and a half, couple of years ago, when he released his book on capitalism. He was a humble man of principle and integrity. He retired from the Senate in 2007 and died in 2014. I appeal to the 4 of you to follow his noble example. Reich ended with an admonition, with an admonishment one hopes Senators Jeff Flake, John McCain, Bob Corker, and Susan Collins will heed. Those are the 4 senators that really should switch, at least to independence, because they share very little with the party. This is what he said. You have not pledged your souls to the Republican Party. You have pledged yourselves to America. Now is the time to deliver on that pledge. Trump has already inflicted much damage with his tax cut scam, his Obamacare sabotage, his environment killing deregulations, and much more. We know that. It is within the power of a few sensible Republicans. A few sensible Republicans is all that we need. A few sensible Republicans. If we get a few sensible Republicans to redirect the trajectory of the country, that would do it. That would do what's necessary. That would bring it in. Before I go to my next subject, which I want to talk about, and it has to do with, I had to take my wife to the doctor yesterday not to the dentist to pull some teeth, and I kind of looked at some toll roads and toll bridges being built and all of that, and I kind of got upset. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk a little bit about the commons. But before that, let me do the right thing. Over the last day, I hadn't really been able to answer some of your questions or look at your feed on this on the Facebook Live page, and I'm going to try to do my duty and do so. So bear with me as I go through them. Let's see. Michael Rudney. Well, this is unexpected. No Democratic rats. Here you go. The war on drugs has wasted over $1 trillion. That is so true. You know, that wasted dollars, though, went into the pockets of some very, very important, wealthy people. Don't think the war on dollars didn't have its benefactors. It did have its benefactors. Michael Rudnin, I can make a recommendation regarding talking the talk. Focus on the issues that matters as progressive have supermajority polling support on the issues. That is absolutely true. And that's what I was talking to Sarah Swain about. Her policies are the ones that even Kansans want. And what she has to be doing is be bold. Don't be scared into, you know, Republicans make progressives scared into pushing their values because they think they're going to come back and going to say, who's going to pay for it? And they're going to raise your taxes and you're going to be poor. But no. You must be ready to hit them right back and hit them hard. Hit them very hard. Gretchen A. Cole, thank you for highlighting Sarah Swain, and we'll continue to highlight her. Gretchen A. Cole again, ban the Electoral College. It's an antiquated system from the 1700s. It was designed to let a few men control who is president of the United States. Don't ever be fooled by that. Is exactly what they want. Wonder Woman's lasso on cops. That's freaking awesome. Yeah. Hey, you know what's in, I mean, when I saw that about her, when I was doing my research about her, I just found that so darn amusing. I thought, wow, that is so good. And for some reason, Mr. Rudnin, they hid that, Facebook hid that picture in the queue, so I went ahead and made it, unhid it so that everybody else could see it. Michael Rudnin, you're talking about a testily perjury in the third. Yeah, that is the reason she did that. All right, let's continue. Gretchen A. Cole, I'm so happy you're running, Sarah. Yes, I am happy to, Gretchen. I think that's the second time you said it, and thank you so kindly for being here. I agree, bullet points should come first. That's what I wanted her to do, come out with the bullet points. Patricia Radak Pantan, welcome aboard, and thank you for listening to the show. Let's see, who else is here? Mike Cisak, in the image posted by Sarah Swain, Wonder Woman is pulling tight her rope around the officer's neck. The Democratic Party said the poster disqualifies her from serving as the state's chief law enforcement officers. Who the hell is the Democratic Party to tell Sarah Swain that she cannot run? Let's look at some of the things some of the people they support have done. Let's look at Senator Menendez, and let's consider what he has done. Do you see the Democratic establishment trying to go ahead and move Senor Menendez from doing anything? Hell no. Sarah Swain, you have the support of progressives and Democrats. Do not fall into that trap. Do not fall into that trap. That is a scare tactic. They're scared because it's a woman that's running, it's a progressive that's running, and if we have a blue wave, the likely quid pro quo that they made with that Republican Attorney General, and I can bet there are some powerful Democrats in Kansas that made a deal with the Republicans. When we talk about establishment, that is the kind of stuff that we're talking about. How the hell do you explain that there was no Democrat running as Attorney General except for Sarah, and you're going to have Democrats come out and say drop out of the race? Are you kidding me? That is malpractice by the Democratic establishment. And anybody wants to argue about that, let's do it, or discuss about that, let's do it. That is malpractice on the part of the Democratic Party by even suggesting that in a race that has absolutely no Democrat running, that the sole Democrat who has been a lawyer, who has been a successful lawyer because of an image that they may decide to misinterpret, she should quit. Come on, folks. A lot of my Democratic compatriots get mad when I hit the establishment of the party. This is what I'm talking about, folks. This isn't about my Democratic compatriots. This is about the establishment, and it's very few of them. It is upsetting. Do not, And absolutely do not allow these fakes, these additional wards of the plutocracy, to change what we know must get done. Mike Cisak again, reacting to a question from someone asking why police had responded to a particular location. Swain wrote, I was going to be a cop, but I decided to finish high school instead. In another comment, she added, what's the difference between a cop and a prostitute? A prostitute only screws one person at a time. Oh my God, that is such a bad statement that she said. Well, you know what? You go ask every person of color. You go ask every poor white person that a cop really screwed, and see what you hear. And you may think it's the exception. It's not. It's just that there's nobody to defend those people who can't defend themselves. You may want to look at police officers as a bastion, the bastions of integrity. I don't. Very few do. I respect police officers that do a good job and do their job that we pay them for. And I abhor those who take advantage of people, who murder, who frame. And there are a lot of those. And it's amazing. Every time we put their reports under scrutiny, how often these reports fail in truth-telling. So please, Mike Cisak, don't humor me, my dear friend, good friend, but don't humor me with something that is going to make me think, oh my God, she's anti-police, she's anti-bad police. Ed Klump, a former Topeka police chief who represents the Kansas Sheriff's Association, Kansas Association of Police Chiefs, denounced Swain's thoughtless anti-police rhetoric. Do you think I care what a police chief has to say? Do you really think I care? These guys that hold up the blue line of silence or whatever it is called, do you really think I care? Or do you think any person who's confronted the evil effected by several of them should care? Hell no. When they're doing a good job, kudos to you. I love you. Look, I'm not anti-police. I'm anti-bad police. There's a police officer who stopped me for driving while black, but he was very nice to me. And when he saw that I had, in his opinion, the right rapport, he was very good to me, and I acknowledged him. I took a picture with him. I blogged about him, and he got a commendation, a citizen's commendation from the police department. I did that. So it's not about, and others have done that as well. The woman who was falsely accused in San Francisco, she was running as a candidate and canvassing a neighborhood, and they sent a cop out to her, and the cop was nice to her. She took a picture with the cop to show it's not that we are anti-cop, but there are too many darn bad cops. And to think that we're going to listen to some cop organization, some union of the cops, and think that, oh, because they say we should denounce this good woman that we will? Dream. Okay, Bruce Pollard, what is a primary source and how can we tell? What is a primary source? Check your output audio again. I think you're going to have to tell me a little bit what you mean. I thought I got rid of the echo. Was there any? Oh, the volume is a bit low. Thank you very much for telling me that, Rudnin. And Democrats trying to flip Republicans into a big tent will only push the party further to the right. Such might be necessary in the short term, but in the long term, it's left or politics with improper left-wing representation. Very good observation, my friend, and we're coming close to the end of the program. And you know what I haven't done for the day, and I haven't done a short pitch, and we probably lost quite a few on Facebook Live, but I think we still have quite a bit on Coffee Party Network as well. Not Coffee Party Network, Blog Talk Radio. Look, okay, I want to read what Mike Cisak just said here. Egberto, the vast majority of people in Kansas do care about law and order. People who don't respect the law and law enforcement who are doing their jobs right are not very popular in Kansas. Who can disagree with that? I am for law and order too. Do you think I want anarchy? I'm for law and order. But law and order doesn't include bad cops. Law and order doesn't include lying cops. Law and order does not include any of that, my dear friend. And that is what Sarah represents. She represents making sure that the cops that are remaining are the good cops. It has nothing to do with being anti-law and order, my dear friend. Anyhow, folks, please remember this is a progressive show, Politics Done Right. We need your support to stay on air. As I mentioned before, we will always bring you progressive candidates from across the country. If you have a progressive candidate you want featured, if you have a good progressive candidate that you want us to talk about, write about, investigate, whatever, you let us know, because that is our job as a progressive program, as a progressive radio show, as a progressive online show, as a progressive vlog, blog, and all. We encompass all those different platforms. It is our job to feature good progressives who, as you know, our party and the networks won't feature. It is our goal to really make this the progressive mantra that the entire country really desires. For that, we need your support. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Please become subscribers of this show. We will be in New Orleans next week, starting Wednesday, and we will bring you coverage of the largest progressive blogging association, where every single one of those Democratic politicians, both the progressive ones or the ones that are pseudo progressives, they're going to be there trying to talk to us, trying to let us support what they're for, and they're going to be out there all throughout the conference. That's where we will be. We need your support. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. I promise you, we will be out there. We will be talking. We will be getting the pulse, and we'll be bringing it back to you. Please, again, become subscribers. We need hundreds, if not thousands, of subscribers at very low, very low subscriptions. You do that, you are a part of the solution. Like I said this morning on KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston, a lot of times we sit back and complain, but for those of us who are out there fighting the battles, for those of us who have given up a whole lot to say, you know what, when others say, somebody should do something about that, we went ahead and picked up the ball and said, okay, we'll do something about it. For those of you who can't pick up the ball and run with it like some of us just threw things away and say, okay, I'm going to do it, all we ask for you to do is become supporters. Support the project. That is how we make progress. We can't expect the other person to do it solely by themselves. We can't expect, a lot of times people just say, oh, somebody is going to do it. Okay. When it was time to do this, said, okay, I am going to be one of those that did it. Just like Majority Report said they're going to be one of the persons that do it. TYT said they're going to be some of the folks that's going to do it. A lot of people say they're going to do it. Now what we need to continue doing this is your support. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know what I'm going to say. I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.